Welcome back to Talking Sports with Brandon. This is the NFL Conference Championship preview video where it's down to four teams, two games, all playing for the final game of the season, Super Bowl in Arizona, which would be about 2 weeks away from when that video or this those games happen. And it comes down to, I would argue, the four best teams at this moment. Clearly, because they're in the game, but I just think that they are the four best teams. The Bills had the case to be one of those teams, but obviously, with them losing, the way they lost, the way that they've played after the really hot start they had to the season, they just never looked like the team that you thought that they were going to be. And the Bengals, kind of after their slow start to the season, where they were 0-2, they come all the way back. They finish at 12-4, obviously with the one game being canceled, and they look like that team that the Bills should have been, which was the all-star, amazing MVP caliber quarterback. The Bills had a better defense, but you have guys making plays on the offensive side, defensive side, and you end up with 13 wins, 14 wins, whatever it is. But you're a powerhouse. You're just one of those teams that people do not want to see in the playoffs, and that just wasn't the case. So I do believe these are the four best teams, which is the 49ers, the Eagles, the Bengals, and the Chiefs. And it's going to be, these are two, like I said, it's going to be two really good games because kind of these teams match up really well against each other. If you think about the Niners and the Eagles, it's, two of the best defenses. The Niners do have the best defense in the NFL, despite having some weaknesses, and we're going to talk about that. But you no doubt they've been the best defense throughout the season. The Eagles have had a top five defense, and they get after the quarterback. 70 sacks this year. I think it's the most in NFL history. Obviously, the extra game helps, but even still, 70 sacks. They have multiple guys on the defensive line who have 10 plus sacks. Secondary can make plays for you. A little weak in the secondary, but they can still make plays. But if that pass rush is getting to the quarterback, they don't have a lot of time to throw the ball. They're getting pressures, QB hits. They don't have time to pick and choose their spots in the secondary to attack. So it's two defenses that can really get after you, can really make a quarterback think. And the offenses, the Eagles have been, one of the highest scoring offenses the entire season. And then the Niners, once Brock Purdy came in, they're averaging around 35 points per game. But as we saw in last week's game against the Cowboys, he can be beat. He can kind of be slowed down. And that's the concerning thing for me. So for this 49ers-Eagles game, I'm just going to say the spread. It is 2.5 for Philadelphia. Obviously, they're the home team. Personally, I am choosing Philly to win this game. Being a Cowboys fan, that's tough to say that the Eagles are going to make the Super Bowl again. But I do believe that they will win this game. Like I said, I think Dallas showed what you can do against San Francisco, and we've seen it a little bit towards the end of the season, where not so much slowing down their offense, but at least kind of attacking that defense. Dallas couldn't attack the defense because they just made mistakes. They had two interceptions, and they just couldn't really get things going. But you could still see it. You could see they can go over the top against that defense. The pass rush against the Cowboys wasn't crazy. It wasn't like they were getting multiple sacks, all these type of pressures. It was there, no doubt, but it wasn't as much as you probably would think that it would be with the kind of line that they have. And like I said, if you give the quarterback time in the pocket, you can go over the top against this defense. That's their weakness. If you can run the ball, which the Eagles definitely can do. Now, will they be able to go for 268 again like they did last week against New York? I'm not sure about that. But can they at least get 130, 140, 150? This Hurts, he's going to be running the ball. His shoulder, he looked good enough against New York to where he has to run and be, Jalen Hurts. That's why he is the quarterback that he was this season, because of his running ability. So he has to be like that. I think they just got to be aggressive on the ground. Now look, the ground may not work. Dallas tried it, didn't really work that much. Once Pollard got injured, it was tough, obviously, because that's, your guy. But Philadelphia has a lot of guys. They have Sanders, they have Hurts, they have Boston Scott, Kenneth Gainwell. So they have a lot of guys who can run the ball on that team. And I think that's going to be the biggest thing for them, is you've got to get the ground game working, because then that sets up that pass where they want to pass it. If you watch Philly games from this season, the run game will be working. They'll be getting 6, 7 yards of carry, and they'll still just be passing it almost every single down. It's just for some reason they do that. It's maybe that comes back to bite them, maybe it doesn't. But if you've watched games from them this season, that's what they love to do. They love throwing the ball, and it could work in this game. But again, you have to establish the ground game, which I think is the biggest thing for them. If they could do that against this Niners defense, kind of stack the box to where they can go RPO, they can go play action, they can go over the top against you with single coverage on Devonta Smith or A.J. Brown. That's where they can beat you. So it's going to be a challenge for San Francisco's defense. It's going to be a challenge for Philly's offense to be able to kind of have the mind games, the in-game adjustments, kind of the changes to see what is going on. The Niners defense is good at disguising blitzes and kind of disguising different formations and schemes. So we'll see what they do. DeMeco Ryans, we'll see how he kind of plans this defense against this offense. But that's going to be a great battle. And then, again, on the other side of the ball, where it's Niners offense, Philly's defense, if they get that pass rush going, which I'm not saying they'll have 7 sacks in this game, but if they can get pressure, just constant pressure on Purdy, because that's what you need. You need pressure on him, because him rolling out, that's really not he's not the best pocket passer, because he just doesn't have all that kind of those tools and everything in his back pocket. But he's better rolling out, but when he rolls out to his left, he's not great. He's good rolling out to his right, but when he rolls out to his left, that's where mistakes can happen. So I think Dallas showed a really good, formula to see how you can stop that offense, because again, they only let up 19 points in that game, and they gifted them 3 before halftime. They just gifted them some points. The offense really didn't do anything. They had one big drive in that game where they did go down the field and get a touchdown, but for the most part, the Niners offense really didn't do anything. I think Debo and Christian McCaffrey had less than 50 yards. Kittle was big, no doubt. He obviously had made the biggest plays in the game, but they didn't do that much. Purdy didn't turn it over, which is still the one thing from him is that you haven't seen, is him not turning the ball over, which I will not be surprised if that happens. I think that the Dallas game, it probably should have happened. There was a couple throws where it should have been picked off. He made mistakes, just made bad looks, bad reads. I think Philly's defense with the pressure. Now, Dallas was getting a lot of pressure as well, but another defense that can get a lot of pressure and make plays on that defensive line, I think it's going to be even more trouble. I just see him making a mistake. He hasn't done it yet. It has to happen at some point. I think this is the game. I said I thought it was last week. It almost was. It was 80%, 85%. I think this game, it does happen. He makes the mistakes. He can't, make the reads that he has to do, make the throws that he has to make. He's been shaky these first 2 playoff games. He's been very shaky at the beginning of the games. Dallas one was more so throughout the entirety of the game, but he's been shaky. I just see mistakes coming from him. So I am going to go Philadelphia in this game. Again, I just think that Dallas showed the weaknesses of San Francisco. And I think Philly now with Hurts, he's not fully healthy, he even admitted that, but he's closer to being fully healthy than obviously he was before. I think he's had his groove back, and I think that the running game with the pass over the top and then the defense pressure on Purdy, that's what will win them this game. So that's the first game at 3 o'clock. Again, I'm going Philly in that game. So NFC representative, it will be the Eagles. And then the AFC game at 6:30. Again, these are great games, both of them. They're going to be close. They're going to be really hard-fought games. But this one, Bengals, Chiefs. Chiefs are -1.5 at home. Again, you get 3 points when you're the home team. That means they're kind of favoring Cincy if they're, getting a 1.5, basically. So, I think that Cincy, I think this is going to be a really good game. Cincy has all the momentum right now, just because of beating the Bills, a beatdown. They really did beat them down in Buffalo. Kind of stirred a lot of things up in Buffalo. And they have a lot of confidence, momentum going into this game. They've, Burrow's 3-0 against Mahomes. They beat them last year in the championship game. They beat them this year, earlier this season. So they know it's just one of those teams. It's like, Kansas City, using them as another example. Tennessee was that team for them. They just couldn't beat Tennessee. Last year they got blown out by Tennessee. They lost to them in the regular season. In the playoffs they beat them, which is the most important, but they just couldn't figure out Tennessee. And then this year they did beat them, despite Malik Willis starting. And again, they barely beat them. So, it's just one of those teams. Is the Bengals like that for them? Potentially. I guess it could be. It's a better team. The Bengals are a way better team than Tennessee is. But, we'll have to see. I think this game's going to be really close. And the biggest question is Mahomes. Is he fully healthy? And to be honest, I think he is. I mean, I don't know exactly. They said it was a high ankle sprain. I don't believe that it was a high ankle sprain because he finished the game, obviously. He did go into the locker room, came out after half, and then played the rest of the game. And he was limping, and you can clearly see it. But he's practiced fully this whole week. No limp, no brace, no cast, no anything. Nothing on his leg. I don't know. I've never seen that before where a high ankle sprain is a guaranteed 2 to 4 weeks at the minimum. It depends on how the severity of the injury, but it's at least 2 to 4 weeks that you're injured. Doesn't mean you can't play through it, but it just means that you clearly are injured. And the fact that he's fully practicing, it's not limited, it's not partaking in certain activities. It's full practice this entire week. I don't know. Maybe it's a mind games. Are they doing that? But again, there's video of him practicing, and he looks like Patrick Mahomes. So who knows what happens with that situation? But based off the the evidence I've seen, he's fully healthy. And if he's fully healthy, that means his mobility. He doesn't do it a lot in the regular season because he still can, but he doesn't need to. But when it comes to the playoffs, and we've seen it a lot of times throughout these last 5 postseasons, 5 championship games. He uses his mobility to win games. That's what he does. He's such a great passer in the pocket, out of the pocket, off schedule and off script. But when he's using his legs, that's the biggest factor of his game in the playoffs because he can take it out whenever you think of that Tennessee game where he had a huge run, where he's making guys miss down the sideline and gets in the end zone. Like he's just had multiple instances where his legs have carried them on drives. And I think it's more important now because without Tyreek Hill, again, they were still one of the best offenses and everything like that, but they don't have that weapon on the outside who you're scared of. Juju, MVS, Watson, Kadarius Toney. These guys don't scare you on the outside. Juju's honestly more slot than outside anyways, so these guys aren't scaring you at all. They're not, as a defense in the secondary, where Bengals, that probably is their weakness, I think you could probably say, is on that defense. It's not a defense like San Francisco or the Philadelphia. It's a good defense. It has some decent players. That defensive line, the linebackers are kind of the stronger part of that unit, but without having that guy on the outside, a Tyreek Hill, who one can just take the top off with the speed, but then two is just a great receiver as well. So you got to double him. You got to think about rolling coverage to him. You got to think about him, and that's what opened up Kelce. Is that if you're going to try and take one of them away, the other guy's going to be open. Kelce's still been great this year because he's just Travis Kelce and he's a great receiver, but without the guy on the outside, I'm curious to see what it will look like. Jacksonville, we kind of saw it. Now, Mahomes obviously got injured, but they did score a touchdown without him, so they still basically got the points. But Kelce had a monster game, and I think Jacksonville just screwed up. I mean, he had, 14 catches? I think he had like 95 yards, to be fair. So it wasn't like he was getting 15, 10, 20-yard catches, but you cannot let Travis Kelce touch the ball 14 times in a playoff game. So that's just Jacksonville. I would assume Cincy was going to be better with that. And he's going to be the biggest, him and Mahomes, if that relationship is working and that, they're on the same page for this game, it's either going to be tough to stop. I think the only thing that can stop them will be not having a threat on the outside. I just think that they can focus more on Kelce. Guys got to make plays then. That means you're trusting MVS, you're trusting Juju, Kadarius Toney. I think McKinnon can play a big factor in this game. These last couple of weeks, he hasn't done much for them. The last 6-7 games of the regular season, he was a monster. I think he's got to play a big factor. I think that Pacheco could be big on the ground. Their offensive line's a good unit, Kansas City. It really is. They have a good unit. And again, if Mahomes is fully healthy, I see no reason as to why he can't be running the ball as much as he does. He's making the throws that he makes, and he's making the plays that he makes. So, I feel confident in Kansas City. And again, that 3-0 versus Mahomes, Burrow against Mahomes, at some point that's got to flip. You got to flip that script. I think it starts now. And I personally think that the Chiefs are going to win this game over the Bengals. It's going to be close, and there's no doubt. Burrow is, I was never down on Burrow. I always thought he was a great quarterback, but I did like Herbert more. I just think that Herbert's talent, like his just pure raw talent, is better than Burrow's. But Burrow's got that, he's just got that thing about him, that just coolness and that ability just to go into stadiums and just win games. He just has that. So I still personally think that Herbert's talent is better. But in terms of just winning big games, I mean he's already 5-1 in the playoffs or whatever he is. I mean just think about that. He's already got like 5 wins in the playoffs. So he's got that thing about him. But personally, I see the Chiefs winning this game. Again, it's going to be close. There's no doubt about it. And it's probably going to come down to a field goal where that could be maybe a concern because Butker for Kansas City has been a little shaky this year. It's basically been Tucker and then Butker as like the kind of the two best kickers these last 4 years, I would say. But Butker has really struggled. He was injured. He comes back. He's missing kicks. He just doesn't look the same. So maybe that's a concern. Maybe if he misses a kick early, you don't feel super confident with him going the rest of the way. I don't know. That could maybe play its hand in this game. But Kansas City at home. Again, this is their 5th straight AFC Championship game. I just, and I even talked about it, I think, the last video where I said, if they lose this game, you really got to start asking questions about Kansas City because that's 5 straight championship games, two wins in those championship games, and only 1 Super Bowl win with 1 loss. It's not the best, and honestly, that Super Bowl they won, they probably should have lost that game. I mean, they were down 10 points. If Garoppolo makes the one throw, if they cover Tyreek down the field, if San Francisco did the things that they needed to do, which wasn't asking a lot in that game, they win that game. So, you don't take that away. They won the Super Bowl, but it wasn't, they definitely easily could have lost that game. So it's just, if they lose this game, that's 3 championship games lost, 1 against the Patriots and 2 against the Bengals. It's just a lot of questions you have to ask. It's just Mahomes is the best quarterback in the league, and he has all these stats and the awards. He's going to win MVP again this year, and you only got 1 Super Bowl. Again, windows aren't open for that long. The fact that it's been 5 years is really big, anyways. I mean, there's no window like the Patriots where it's 20 years. That's not normal. So if let's say they lose this game. People thought that they would be not bad this year, but they would, they thought Chargers would be better. The Raiders, all these upgrades that the AFC West made. They thought the Chiefs, some people had them missing the playoffs. I still had them making the playoffs. I just didn't think they'd win the division. But people thought that this year they would be bad. If you lose again this year, more salary cap. You got guys that may be wanting to leave, guys getting older. Who knows what could happen? They've been relatively healthy throughout these 5 years with their key guys. You just don't know what could happen from a year-to-year standpoint, and you just wonder what would happen if they lose this game. So I think legacy-wise, I think it's a legacy game for Mahomes, and it may sound crazy because he's 27 years old, he still has all this time left, but he's really got to win this game. I think he's going to put the team on his back. I think he makes more plays than Burrow does. These two guys can throw interceptions. There's no doubt about it, so maybe that comes up big, but I do have the Chiefs winning this game, which would obviously lead to a Philadelphia-Kansas City Super Bowl. I think any one of these matchups, whatever way it goes, is going to be a good, 2 teams on paper going into that game. I think it's just going to be good matchups. I think you could find different storylines between the 2 teams anyway. So, I do like it in that sense that, it's not like you're like, oh, if this one team wins, it's like it's probably not going to end up being great. Like, both of these or any one of these matchups that does happen, I think will end up being a really good matchup. So that is exciting. But yes, I have Philadelphia and I have Kansas City winning, and we'll see what happens. It's gonna be a really good games this weekend, and it's gonna be exciting. So we'll come back after these games and we'll talk about them. We'll talk about what happened in those games, why one team won, why one team lost, and as we prepare, obviously we have a week off and then we have the Super Bowl, we'll talk about the Super Bowl, we'll talk about some different storylines, we'll just talk about different things that are happening between the Super Bowl game and then also just what's going on around the league, because there has been some news about what's some head coaches being hired, some other ones being interviewed, everything like that, possibly trade rumors, everything like that with players. So that will come during the week, in the time between the Super Bowl and the championship games. So definitely look out for that. And definitely watch out for next week's video, which again will be after the championship games, recapping them. So I'll see you then, and thank you for watching.